Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Iowa Live. Lou and Jackie here. We are so excited and got really excited last week when we marched out to the mailbox. Dun, 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 dun. Look what arrived last week, Jackie.
Yeah, the newest edition of the Iowa History Journal, and I'm sure many of you excited, especially when you're seeing some sports on the front cover, as you see there, as we're all kind of longing for that right now, especially when it comes to the NFL, National Football League. But how exciting to learn some incredible Iowa ties. So, of course, we need to talk to Michael Swanger this morning with the Iowa History Journal. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Lou and Jackie. Always a pleasure. Great to see you again.
Yeah, we are ready for some football, definitely, but I bet you a lot of people didn't realize that what we know as the NFL right now started really close to the state of Iowa.
It really did. 100 years ago, the American Professional Football Association was launched, and shortly afterwards it became the National Football League. And the first game was played across the Mississippi River over in Rock Island, Illinois. And both teams featured a handful of Iowans on that very first game that was 100 years ago this month. So another just terrific connection to Iowa and our history. The cover photo is actually a picture of Rock Island independent halfback Fred Chicken in a game in November of 1920, who he was playing for the Independents. And that was a rare photo that Don Doxey, who wrote the story for us, the longtime Quad City Times columnist and sports editor, was able to secure for us from one of the old Davenport newspapers. So that was a coup just getting that image. And we thought that was a fun photo to share on our cover and launch that story about the history of all the Iowans who've played in the league over the years.
Yeah, really need to see some of the old photos here. The Dayton Triangles is what we have a picture of in here, too. What an interesting name for a team, the Triangles.
Oh, it's always great to know the history, especially as many of us are longing to watch sports again in so many ways, but learning about those Iowa ties. Talk about some of the more interesting things we're going to learn when we pick up the edition.
Well, in addition, I also want to note in the cover story that there are a few Iowans we chose to select. There were more than 200 Iowans who have played in the NFL. Some of the early stars were Duke Slater, who was an All-American at the University of Iowa, and he was inducted into the NFL's Hall of Fame this year. Last year, we wrote a little thing about him being honored by the U of I, and he went on to play professionally. He was the first African-American lineman in the NFL, and Waddy Cool is another guy who we featured in that story, and he was he's credited with catching the first touchdown pass in NFL history 100 years ago. So I wanted to point those two guys out. There are several in the story, and of course we couldn't get to all of them, so that was a big part of our story. The other part of the issue is our third and final part of our Heartland to Hollywood series, written by John Busby, and where John takes us behind the scenes in the making of movies like Field of Dreams and The Bridges of Madison County, and what it's like to make films in Iowa over the years. And he does a great job of talking to producers and directors with that story and giving readers really the history of some of the films that have been made here in Iowa. So those are our two big stories to start off. And then, of course, we have another unusual story, a very uncommon piece of history, where David Conan, who recently wrote a book that we reviewed about a year ago, did some incredible research and is kind of rewriting the history book a little bit about Iowa and the Civil War. And he researched and identified 76 Iowans who fought for the Confederacy. And his book is an amazing read, and we thought that it was an important piece of history to tell and share. And we were grateful to David for sharing some of the research and things that he had written about in his book. So it's a very interesting and unusual story that you're only going to read in this issue of Iowa History Journal.
Now, we mentioned the 100th anniversary of the NFL, but there's also another 100th anniversary that we are celebrating, Jackie.
Yeah, the state park system, which is a part of your column, which is excited to hear about. Why is this a passion?
You know, I think just what better time, as we've all talked about, finding ways and to beat COVID-19 and things to do and get out of the house and explore and enjoy things from a safe distance. There's really no better opportunity to go out and explore our state parks than now this fall, because it's the centennial of that system being started. You know, the photo featured in my column is Ledges State Park up in Boone. Of course, there's so many parks across the state. Depending on where you live, you could pick and choose one in your backyard. They're easy to find, and it's always such a beautiful time of year to get out in the fall with the leaves changing and everything to explore those parks. But just encourage Iowans to stop and mark a milestone for our places of quiet beauty, because it was a big deal that those parks got created a little over 100 years ago, and this was the actual centennial of it, but legislation was first introduced in 1917, I believe. So just encouraging people to get out and explore not only the outdoors and enjoy it, but also learn about another part of our history.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What more beautiful time than as we head into the fall and the colors are changing. You keep mentioning the research and the various authors that you have on the stories that are part of the Iowa History Journal. Talk about the excellence and awards that you've been given in your 2019 series, so people really truly understand not only the breadth of people that you bring on board, but also now the response and reaction that you're getting from your great work.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the work that Jerry Harrington has done for us. We are really blessed to have so many wonderful writers contribute to the magazine. And just recently, the State Historical Society of Iowa, the Board of Trustees, announced the winners of the the Excellence in History Awards. And Jerry Harrington won the George Mills Louise Now Popular History Award for his series that he wrote for us last year about Carrie Chapman Catt. You may recall we talked about it on the show last year. It was a 3-part series about Carrie, and of course, we introduced that story last year to get ahead of the news cycle, because we knew it was going to be in the news just last month, well, about a week ago, that marked the centennial of the certification of the 19th Amendment. But we decided to launch that series last year because we wanted to recognize the ratification, because the states had to ratify it first, and we thought that was really a significant step ultimately in the passage of the 19th Amendment. And so Jerry did a wonderful job of getting his arms around a huge subject, and of course a tower, an icon in Iowa history, in Carrie Chapman Catt. So I wanted to mention that because we're very proud of the work that everyone does for the magazine, but it was especially rewarding, I'm sure, for Jerry and for us that he got that recognition.
And if people want to see some back orders so that they can go through the history and the stories that are now award-winning, how can they do so?
They can go online to iowahistoryjournal.com, and now is a great time to do so and to pick up Jerry's series and all of our back issues. Once a year, we hold a fall sale on those back issues in the months of September and October, and they're 50% off. And we even put an ad in the back of the magazine to remind our subscribers and folks who pick us up on the newsstand that this is your time now to get them while you can, because as you know, we've talked about this before, they're very collectible. They have a long shelf life, and our avid readers want to get all of them and keep them, and they give them sometimes to their children or their grandchildren. So we're really tickled when they have that kind of shelf life and that kind of readership.
All right, Michael Swanger, thank you so much. September, October installment of Iowa History Journal available right now. Get a copy of it. You'll be so glad you did.
Great to see you, sir. Keep up the great work, and we appreciate you joining us this morning.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Bye now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. This is Iowa Live.